The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. We are now entering the second round of questions for the panel. Our panel member, Mr. Hermy, has to leave in a few minutes, so if anyone in the body has a question specifically for him, please say so now and we'll allow you to ask that question before he has to leave, if you have a question for him. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Senator San Augustine.
it may be related to him, but it impacts actually the director, Ed, and him. So I don't know. I think the two can handle it.
Okay, then
Thank you
very
for being
much.
here, sir.
Okay, please use your discretion to ask the question now. If you have a question specific to him, Senator Perez and Speaker Terlaki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Hermy, yes, thank you for being here and providing an opportunity for us to ask questions. Just, I guess, a question about the overweight. So I understand you're talking about the green zones in the states, how they're able to load up the containers prior to shipment, and then on the other end, they normally have another green zone where they redistribute the load so it complies with the weight limits. On Guam, we don't have that, and I believe that was in the works at some point. It's been in discussions, but it has not been, it hasn't materialized to this date. Is it your understanding that this is one of the priorities of the port, to have a green zone redistribution to allow to comply with the weight limits?
Senator, that's a very good question. I appreciate that question. I don't think I'm at liberty to be able to answer that question of what the plans are at the port, but definitely that will be a wonderful thing to do. Prior to the Public Works issuing these special permits, we literally had to rent a space in the port to offload these extra weights, the overweights, right? We did that, and we were paying a rental fee at one of the warehouses in the port, and that was our way to try to comply with the law. And then, of course, when DPW began issuing the special permits, then we didn't have to rent that space in the port. But yes, that would be a great thing to do in the port, where the facility can handle offloading of the excess weights before they actually go over the test, the scale, the test facility.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Just, I guess, a question about, are you granted these continuous permits or single-use permits for overweight containers? Is it true that once the container is offloaded, you just basically transport that directly? There's no redistribution happening at this time, so you pay for the overload, the overweight load?
So with the test permit, it allows us to increase the weights and still be within compliance with the test permit. So it goes through the test facility, and for the most part, we are within the allowable excess weights, right? But there have been times when we have been over by like 1,000 pounds, and we end up getting a fee, being penalized, and we have to pay a penalty for that excess weight. So it has happened to us several times, right? Even though we try to get the weights to be reduced, we even have gone to the point where on a 40-footer reefer container, we've had to give our suppliers a load plan on how to distribute the weights in the container. So, for example, things like chicken, beef, or seafood, depending on what the product would be, we would have to say to them, for the beef, please put it on the nose or in the middle part of the container, but never by the door, because that's where we always get hit big time. Those axles 4 and 5 are where we would incur the excess weight. So imagine that shouldn't be our part as a wholesaler or distributor to instruct the supplier, the manufacturer, on how to distribute the weights in the container. But we have to do it, and we tell them why. Because if you don't, then we get hit with a stiff penalty when it hits the facility, the scale here in Guam. So that has helped for us.
Okay, so the impact of this bill would basically relieve you of that requirement, or how would that relieve some of these?
What this bill would do is
Yeah.
we won't even have to worry about applying for these 90-day test permits, which is really the limit. Every 90 days, we would have to apply for this special permit. The bill would just strike away that need for a test permit, and we would still be doing what we were doing with the special permit and still be in compliance with the law.
Okay, well, thank you for the response, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Speaker Terlahi.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I was going to ask you how long your special permits lasted. You said 90 days. And if I'm reading correctly on page 20 of the bill, the fee for a permit is $100 for oversized and overweight loads. Is that $100 then per truck for 90 days?
No, that's just the permit, and it allows any of our containers to be on the highway and still be in compliance as long as we're within the allowable weights.
So that $100 covers your entire company for all vehicles for 90 days?
Correct. Yes,
All right,
Senator.
and then how long has this special permit's been going on?
I think it's if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about 3 years. Am I correct, Director? About 3 years?
Madam Speaker, this is in law. This is current law.
Right,
So whenever this was enacted,
2015.
right.
Right, so I'm confirming that we are giving out special permits, $100 per company for 90 days, and all trucks are covered. And, okay, yeah. That seems very affordable to me, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And the penalties that you said you've received for overweight at the axles, at the 4 and 5, what kind of penalties?
For us, penalties has been on corned beef.
No, I mean amounts.
The amounts? Oh, anywhere from $1,200 to over $2,000.
Okay. All right. Would you have any objection that the fees, the penalties be reinstated into this bill so that there's no gap that, we pass a bill allowing extra weight without allowing any provision for DPW to enforce those? And that I'm actually thinking they should be increased because there is additional.
Yes, I agree, Senator.
All right, thank
Speaker,
you.
Madam Speaker, yes.
And then final question is, when we allow the longer length of a vehicle because we've got additional axles, so we're protecting the roads, right?
Correct.
What about safety of traffic and safety of other, road travelers? The maneuverability of these vehicles, do you find any issue with that?
Bottom line, I think it will be the operators, the truckers who are operating those vehicles. They obviously would need to understand that they're driving a vehicle that's not, a sedan, but a much longer vehicle. And so safety has to be paramount, in their minds when they're driving down any highway, whether it be Route 1 or any of the major highways. I would think that these truckers would have safety as topmost, paramount in their minds as they are driving.
All right, thank you. Would you mind if we made a copy of your permit fee schedule before you leave? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Speaker Therese. Senator Teidigli.
Hermie, thank you so much for being here to testify. You mentioned earlier about the fee that you had to pay, a penalty because you were overweight. You said between $1,200 to $2,000. Is that per violation? How much per violation?
Per violation.
Is what? Is it once you go over 80,000 and there's a violation, how much do you pay?
Actually, Senator Teidigli,
Yeah.
it's not the 80,000 pounds. Rarely do we go over 80,000 pounds. It's always on the axles, and so when it goes through the scale would give the weights for the first axle, which is right over the end, right below the engine. Axles 2 and 3 is right behind the driver, behind the cab. And then axles 4 and 5 is the rear, right? It's always the axles 4 and 5 where we would encounter any kind of an overweight situation. So if the current law calls for 34,000 pounds, right? But with the permit, it allows us to get up to 41,000 pounds. And so for the most part, we try to, because we've had a history of what the weights have been, we've been able to reduce the weights, right, and still be within compliance. But from time to time, I don't know whether it's because of the angle of the container, especially the 20-footer, because if you see some of them, the angle, I don't know what that degree would be, Eddie, on the weights, right? But you see some, for some reason or another, the angles on some containers are about like that, and others are a stiffer angle. And so that's where we notice that we tend to have an overweight situation. So we would even advise our truckers, right, because we don't do the hauling, we would ask them, can you make sure that it gets onto a chassis that would not allow for that type of an angle where the weights now all of a sudden shift towards the door. And again, we're not exceeding 80,000 pounds. We're only exceeding the weight for that particular axle, that tandem axle.
And Hermie, how much is that for one violation like that?
Oh, it depends on what the weight is, what the overweight is. So the current law is, it's right there. I'm sorry, on the violation. It's $500, and then for every pound over, it's 25 cents. This is on page 15, right? The first violation.
So it's only $500 and then 25 cents?
And then for every pound that's over, it's 25 cents.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
Page 15.
Okay.
The strikeout lines, beginning line 7.
That's the current.
Yeah, that's the current.
Thank you, Hermie. I really appreciate you being here. You know, and as far as Irish Spring is concerned, you know, going up 30%, I think, you know, competition, people are going to switch to Ivory.
Dial, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Esta.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Senator Ada.
Thank you. Hermes, I got a question. Your previously, before the weight was implemented, the weight restrictions, how many containers were you bringing in?
Previous to
The weight restrictions, limitations.
Gosh, I last year, I think, well, no, 2 years ago, I remember doing providing a written testimony, and at that time I looked at my notes and we had brought in just a little over 400 containers.
And then with
And then just last year, 2021, we brought in a total of 586 containers. We're talking about containers from the U.S. mainland, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Asia.
So that increase in containers, is it because of the decrease in weight decrease in, or the restrictions on the weight?
No, it's just the demand, consumption. I think we saw in 2020, right when there was all of a sudden there were all kinds of restrictions about dining in, and most people started buying products and cooking at home. And so the demand was there, right? Families started buying more products, feeding their kids, and then of course kids weren't at school, so they ended up buying more food, right, to feed the kids, right? So we saw that happening in 2020, the second half of 2020, and then of course all of 2021. So the demand has been there. Yeah.
I see, because, you know, I know you were mentioning earlier about, you know, costs, you know, we were talking about if we would be able to decrease costs if this was implemented. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into play with that, right?
Right.
I think it's the cost of raw goods, coming in.
Correct.
The cost of shipping, the cost of inland freight, our local minimum wage, GRT, everything. So even if we were to pass this bill, that does not necessarily mean that we would be able to reduce costs, but at least try to maintain currently what we have, right?
You are correct. Yes.
And I think it's important to know that if we can get more products, more consumer goods on island and get them to the consumers, even by increasing the weight limitations, that would allow more. I mean, because when you look at what happened, I'm not sure if it happened in your industry, but in our industry, we had issues with raw materials that pushed back shipping. So now we couldn't bring in a container a month. We had to wait 6 to 8 weeks for that same container that would have only taken a month. So I think if we are able to bring in more products to bring into our people and keep our shelves full in the grocery stores and things like that, I think that would kind of balance what we're doing here today, would it?
You bring an excellent point, Senator. There's been a lot of shortages from the suppliers' side, and consequently, because we live so far away, and it takes several weeks to ship anything from the mainland to Guam, we've had to increase our buffer stocks on island. Mm-hmm. And that's where now we see an increase in containers, because right now you just go to any of the supermarkets and you see a lot of holes on the shelves. Produce, for example, it's hard to find any produce on island. There's major shortages. Shipping companies are having staff shortages because of COVID. The cost of raw materials have increased, right? So all those things are beyond our control. But we here, this legislative body, can control what we can control, and that is the weights that we bring in. The cost of living here in Guam is already high because virtually everything is imported, right? Fuel, food, numerous commodities they all continue to rise, right? But at least with this bill, I can assure you that we don't have a reason to pass on another increase to the end consumer, right? We'll maintain whatever that cost is right now.
And I think what's also important to know is that not just try to maintain, but keeping food on the shelves, keeping materials and products in our stores, so that our people don't have to scramble wondering why are these products not here. And you're right, we do, just to get a ship here is already 2-3 weeks. I think that if we're able to bring in more products by lifting up the threshold there for the weight, then I think more distributors would be able to bring in more commodities that would be able to be given out to the stores for the retail for sale, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada. We'll now proceed with, Senator Moylan, you have a question?
Just briefly, thank you, Hermie, for your presentation. You had a sheet of paper that you were referring to, reference to the price that you may have to increase, or how much more this would increase the chicken and the rice and commodities. If you have that, I appreciate if we can have a copy of that, and I can distribute that amongst my colleagues here too. Do you have a sheet there that you were referring to with the price?
Oh, calculation. I don't have anything with me right now, but okay. that I just got that from our purchasing department, because I asked them, what if we had to just revert to the current law where it's only 34,000 pounds and not have the special permit? What's the net effect? So that's how I was able to come up with the increase. As I said, rice will increase by a factor of 18%, and chicken thighs will increase by a factor of 25%, because you're going from 51,000 down to 44,000 pounds, right? 7,000 pounds removed. That's 14%, right? So we're willing to
Thank you very much.
Right, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Moylan. So now we will begin with round 2 of questioning, beginning with Senator Titlegy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, Ed, I really appreciate all the comments you made. I took the time a year ago in the 35th to sit down and talk to you about, especially about axles and the importance of it. So I greatly appreciate all your hard work and the comments that you made today. You know, I'm hoping that before we do amendments, we break for tomorrow and then bring our amendments in, because I really would like to review what you said again to ensure that I'm making a wise decision here. So I greatly appreciate it. Director Ariola.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I just make one final comment?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So Madam Chair and senators of the 36th Guam Legislature, again, as I said, I truly support this passage of Bill 83-36 because it strikes the right balance. And I mentioned 3 things. The first was the cost of goods entering our island won't be impacted in a negative way. And secondly, the size and weight limitations for the vehicles will be updated and modernized. And then third, the Guam's highways will be protected, as containers will now only traverse on these designated haul roads. So again, we need your support. And Madam Chair and senators, I urge you to do the right thing for our island residents, and please support the passage of Bill 8336. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are excused from the panel. Please continue, Senator Titlegy.
Okay. Director Ariola, how much does it cost DPW to repair roads that have been damaged, and what kind of resources do you have to do so?
Senator, it depends what type of repair we're talking about. It could be from a simple filling of a pothole with cold mix, or it could be a complete cutout, which is what we did along Route 8 a couple years ago. That was a contract that I think that might have been a $6, if not an $7 million contract, where the contractor went to different areas of Route 8, and there were portions of Route 8 that were actually marked out by DPW, where the road was degraded, and so they basically cut it out. They replaced the base course, put in a concrete slab, and then replaced it with 2 layers of asphalt concrete. Again, it's going to vary by square foot and the type of repair that you're looking at.
$7 million, you said, and it was just, tell me, from how long was that road?
That's from the intersection at Route 1 all the way up to Route 10, the tri-intersection.
It's $7 million to repair the road. Okay, and as far as enforcement is concerned, the penalties, what kind of citations have you been issuing out lately? Do you have enough people to even enforce these rules that are currently in place?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, Senator, the enforcement happens at the weigh station at the commercial port. As Hermie was explaining, when you are overweight, you will be assessed a fine based on whatever is overweight, whether it be your axles or the total weight of the vehicle.
So you have enough people to do these enforcement. What about the roads that
within that station? Yes, ma'am.
What about the roads on the side of the roads that have been dug up by
We aren't out at the side of the roads yet. We have been trying to procure. It's called a mobile weigh station, so that we will, similar to revenue and tax, how their motor carrier vehicles safety division goes out and inspects trucks on the fly. We had a procurement issue last year, so we had to cancel that. So we are again out in the procurement stage, trying to procure 2 sets of mobile weigh stations that will be used out and about within the various routed roads throughout the island. And that basically is we'll pull them over, we'll weigh the truck, and see if they're overweight, depending on what the law provides.
Are these the same enforcement agents, people at DPW who also inspect like the roads that have been dug up by like maybe a utility or a mobile company that's come up and dug out and didn't repair the road back to its original state? Are
These
these
would
the same
probably
people?
be more specified staff to do this, because you've got to be trained with a mobile waste station.
Okay, I see. Is 90 days, Vince, enough time for you to create these rules and regulations? It's only in May. It says May. And then when you do that, create these rules and regulations, if this bill should pass in a way, everything has been struck out here, you know, on the current fines and requirements. If this were to pass next week, what rules are we going to be following?
I think 90 days is a little short, to be truthful. I think I've seen in other mandates where it's usually like 6 months, 180 days to come up with rules and regulations, just knowing how the wheels of the government move. But, you know, if that can be extended, I'd be fine with that as well.
Don't you think it should be extended a bit, considering there's no plan in place, and plus these haul roads that we're talking about, the military not even constructing until 2024?
No, you know, I think we can have rules and regulations in place, you know, that cover portions of this bill, to include fees and fines and more identifying certain routes, certain roads, and things of that nature, such as, you know, all tractor trailers should drive on the outer lanes, things of that nature. But if there's an extension, that would be fine as well.
You've mentioned that twice. If there's an extension, that would be fine. So that's kind of a hint to me, you know, to try and extend this. The other one is the letter from U.S. Department of Transportation, when they said these routes may experience faster deterioration of the pavement due to heavier loads. An increase in the legal load would reduce the life of the pavement, especially at intersections. I'm sure you have to be concerned with this, very concerned with this, because it cost you $7 million just to do some repair, and not on a very large road. And there is so many potholes, so many issues with our roads on, and I was told that it's like, is it still true to form, $1 million a mile? I mean, that was told to me 4 years ago, that to repair or even to build a road, it's $1 million a mile. So I can imagine what it is today and how much funding that's been given to DPW to address, you know, putting out new roads or building new roads or repairing the ones that we have currently. And the cost of that is so high. You know, for us to look at this bill thinking that it's going to save the people of Guam money, you know, if you look at, nothing stops inflation, you know, that's for sure. Things are going to be more expensive and it's going to move in that direction. And I even asked Hermie, can you guarantee me that if we pass this bill that it's not going to cost us any money, you know, or there's not going to be any increase? He's already told us it's 30% increase for soap. They're going to pass that on to the consumer. And for them to say, oh, but it's not going to be as much, I beg to differ. And really, yeah, Ed was right, competition, you know, as far as cost is concerned, that's where you go to somebody else who has a, you know, either the same product at a lower price or another product that you can afford. But I've advocated so much for roads and putting money in at DPW to fix our roads because it's a safety issue. It's a big time safety issue. I only have 10 seconds here, but I thank you so much, Vince, and again, Ed, for all your guidance too as well, and appreciate your comments. But I think we have a lot of amendments that we need to do for this bill to make it better, and one of them is the timeline, Vince. I'm bringing it up now a third time, so I'll see what I'll do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tidegly. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the panel for being here. Mr. Ariola, with regard to the same thing, I noticed here that, and yeah, I thought it was kind of ambitious to give you just 90 days to come up with the rules and the regulations. But in the interim, okay, on the assumption that, okay, if this bill was to pass and it was to be signed into law next week, between next week and 90 days, what is your understanding as far as enforcement or the ability to be able to?
Well, if the bill does pass, and if you look at the fees and fines as a strikeout, that if the bill is passed as written, those fines and fees wouldn't apply. And as I was just mentioning to the speaker earlier, if an amendment I wouldn't mind an amendment that would say the fees and fines would stay in statute until such time that the rules and regulations are duly promulgated.
And I'm sure it was just probably, you're right, it's something that can be fixed in there.
Sure, there's got to be a placeholder.
Yeah. Okay, actually, that's the only question I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. Senator Terlahi.
First off, I just want to thank the panel for being with us today. I know that the project's going to be very costly. And I just wanted to ask the director, if we're talking about 4 million a mile for 4 miles, then what is your rough estimate on just completing the project from, I see, commercial port to Naval Station and then commercial port to Public Works? Can you give me, Mr. Director, a rough estimate of how much it would cost?
Thank you, Senator. I've been talking with our chief engineer for highways here, Lyndon. It really depends, Senator, on the design. And the design will really tell us what the construction time is going to be. At this point, we're just kind of guessing right now, a 2-year period probably. Let me give you an example, and this is just a much shorter example. The complete repaving of Route 1, and that's a little less than 2 miles. That's 300 days. So a project like this, going from Naval Station all the way up to Route 3, even though it's just the outer lanes, but it does include 5 bridges. It could take 2 years, it could take 2.5 years, depending on how we plan to get the process of that construction started and completed. And also the contractor, it depends how many, what our timelines are. And in my experience, even though it's just been a couple years at DPW, it all depends on the design. The design drives a lot of the construction.
And I would think that this project can be eligible for funding coming from the federal highway funds.
No, this is completely funded by Department of Defense.
Department of Defense.
100%.
Also federal funds.
Yes.
Okay. With all the deliberation that happened today, I'm convinced that we need to go forward with this project. And I think for us to really anticipate the realities of just making sure that we do fix the road and we have the additional, for the trucking. I hope, and I just want to say that I stand in full, I rise in full support of this bill. And I asked my colleague to join me in passing this bill. And I know that Ed, we started this out of my office, the original office. So I'm in full support of this project. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Terlahi. Senator San Agustin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vince and Ed, take a look at page 10. Go to page 10. I'm looking at the dates that they have there because, the delay in the bill finally coming to the floor. I'm looking at, would you have any objection if we just move the date one whole year later? Like the first one there, instead of December 31st, 2021, move it to 2022 and so forth, going all the way down. Just move it up to the next year so it's applicable.
Well, that's why we put in there, or once constructed to a higher design.
But Ed, you can have anything you want, but I'm just saying, if we move the date, then we already made the
Sure.
adjustment.
No
Because,
objection
see,
to that.
by December 22, if it's not until it's constructed, then you.
Yeah,
you
we
gotta
selected these dates, you gotta remember, like 2 years ago.
That's correct.
So let's update it, that's a good
Just-
idea.
just to update it.
No objection.
And then in following, Vince, I think what you forgot to mention was the Waising Sung Road for estimate costs. How long is Waising Sung? The road that you're gonna repave?
White Sung, yes, sir.
That's about $6-7 million, right?
That's a close to $7 million project, yes.
And that's less than a mile, correct? Or about a mile? Is that about a mile?
A little over a mile. But
Okay.
it includes sidewalks, drainage issues, and things of that nature, yes.
So it could estimate, instead of 4, it could be like $7 million.
And that's 3 lanes.
See, 3 lanes. So good, that's a fair estimate then. Now, if you were gonna do, because the Department of Defense is focused on, and you keep mentioning up to NCS, Anderson is further up by where I live. And did you forget that road, that you've gotta do the whole road? It's Route 1. It's from Anderson to Naval Station, am I correct? Maybe the engineer will.
Camp Blas.
It's just from Camp Blas only?
Right.
So you don't plan on seeing any heavy load coming out of Anderson?
I'm sorry?
You don't expect any heavy load coming out of Anderson?
That's, we have not been informed of that from the military folks, that it would be from Naval Station to Camp Blas.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that that was clear, because there is construction going on in our roads up in Jigo, and
They're repairing what they damaged when they installed the cable lines underneath.
but it's not balanced with the other road, wasn't
That'll be
balanced.
fully reconstructed by the contractor.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. Next one, and it was mentioned about the rules and regulation. Maybe on page 22, maybe the amendment should read that department shall promulgate rules and regulations as may be necessary to carry out the purpose of this chapter within 90 days after enactment, but all fines and penalties will stay intact until the rules and regulations are adopted. Would that be the proper verbiage? I mean, just to make sure there's a
That reads
carryover.
fine.
Okay. Thank you. Other than that, Madam Chair, I'm in full support of this bill. We make the adjustment and we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. Senator Perez.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So in the bill, it states designated hall, road, highways, and basically it says they will have a reconstructed lane in each direction with a higher standard design. Perhaps if you can describe what that would entail, what would a higher standard of design include, Director?
If you don't mind, I'll let Linda, the chief engineer, handle that.
So
Yes.
the higher design standard is, so currently, Federal Highway Standard for roads is they use something called AASHTO Design Guide. So AASHTO stands for American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. So what they do is they set a design life based on the amount of anticipated and projected vehicles and traffic that they're going to use. So the higher design standard would mean potentially a longer design life and heavier and more loads to the pavement to account for what that projected military vehicle load is, and also too for current traffic, projecting it at a heavier weight.
So it'd probably be good to put that reference in there, is my thinking, because it doesn't specify what that means. AASHO is what you were referring to, right?
AASHTO, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, the other thing about this bill, so it opens up a potential issue. So when these larger loads are traversing on non-haul road highways, the impact to those roads, does DPW have any procedures in place or any kind of anticipation on how to address the wear and tear on those roads when these shipments traverse off the highways? Do you have any plans for increased maintenance?
Well, I think the plan, of course, is not to have them go off on the roads, because if they do, that's why we would want a higher fine to prevent them from doing that. That would be number one. Number two, it would be spot checks with the mobile weight scales that we have coming on board. You know, those tend to deter companies and or individuals from doing such. I think, though, you know, in working here with Ed and with the wholesale and transportation industry here in Guam, they know where we're coming from. You know, I think the issues that we've been working on over the last 2, if not 3 years, have come to the forefront, and they know, you know, we've upped some of the weight limits, but I've also we're going to stand firm on upping the fines, simply because we have to make sure that even with the higher weight limits, they don't exceed that as well. And if they do, it's going to be a hefty fine, so that you know, you want to alter that human behavior so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, but the destination of these larger loads it's eventually going to lead off of a haul, a designated haul road highway, is what I'm saying. So basically, the distribution center is not going to be along that Highway 1 or Route 1.
I think the clear majority, though, of center of the trucks, the tractors, of the trailers, the clear majority are headed for Harmon Industrial Park. I don't see them going anywhere else. And the only reason why like I mentioned earlier, we offered 8 and 16 is just as an alternative in case there's some form of emergency. And even that would be far and few between. But clearly, though, the clear majority is going to be on that reconstructed outer lane of Route 1.
Yes, but Harmon Industrial Park is not entirely encased in Route 1, is what I'm saying. So
right,
eventually
right.
they're going to have to go off the Hall roadway, and that's what I'm talking about, is the damage done to those roadways,
well,
and potentially the other issues. So the thing is, we're allowing, through this bill, it's allowing for them to traverse more easily on these routes. But once I get off the routes, then what is the situation? How is that going to be
well, once they're in that route,
addressed?
once they're in Harmon Industrial Route, that entire area has just been repaved, and the industry paid for that. As Eddie had mentioned, to reduce the wear and tear in their trucks. So that road should last for quite a bit. Yeah, again, no one can really tell how long a road is going to last. You just can't. You can have some idea, you know, like Route 8, that's a 35-year-old, if not a 40-year-old road. Sure, deterioration is going to happen. But I think, you know, once they get into Harmon Industrial Park, you know, that's an old, underneath that's an old airfield, if you will. And so we know that the base of that is real solid, and that's why they just put a 4-inch asphalt and a 1-inch non-skid layer on that of asphalt concrete.
Okay, so this was on previous testimony, so this question's for Eddie Cruz. So you recommended that new zoning regulations where a new subdivisions build a solid concrete or solid wall between the highway and residential subdivisions. You know, for instance, in California, most residential areas have solid walls between them and the major highways that trucks use. And Guam doesn't have this currently. Do you still recommend this practice?
Well, you know, building codes are totally different thing from what we're talking about here. But I remember in the master plan that Tony Lamarena and a bunch of people through the years had tried to design. And in areas where there was high traffic, I forgot what the number is. We did calculations and measurements of how much traffic goes on each area, but The original idea, the concept was we were going to do that when they built Liguan Terrace on Marine Drive there in Dededo because of the proximity to the major highway. As you know, a lot of areas, especially like there in Dededo, there's a lot of pedestrians are getting hit. And that's one of the reasons why they built that aluminum fencing there where the park is at. So that was a consideration. Now, over the years, we had talked about concrete walls in areas where there's a curve, where there's a residential area on the side. If you look at actually DPW's design for some of these expansions, including the Route 3 intersection, they did the setback and they constructed a brand new fence there. Basically that's a lot more economical and easier to maintain than a concrete wall, especially with graffiti involved. But this is totally, out of our limits, but I do recommend it in some areas. I've always recommended that when they did subdivisions, especially large planned subdivisions, that they did have some kind of barrier, whether it be a concrete fence, whether it be a sidewalk with a high curbing like they do on Marine Drive in Tamuning, even medians. I mean, we look at even in front of JFK, there was constructed by DPW a cyclone woven wire fence there just to keep the students from getting run over when they cross over to Kmart. But I don't think that has anything to do really with too much with a haul road or anything else, other than trying to promote some safety. Because my feeling is, once these haul roads are constructed, and I had a discussion with DPW, that because they were going to use the outermost lane, that it was kind of like a suicide lane, that people always crossing into driveways and going in and out in traffic, the safety factor would have to change there. And so my recommendation to the Guam Contractor Association was we were going to all try to police ourselves as an industry and possibly even decrease the speed limit for trucks going through that area, especially on Marine Drive in that short section in Tamuning there. Further out towards Dededo and some of these places might not be so bad, but in that area where you've got traffic coming out of Atkins Scroll or some of these other driveways, it's pretty self-explanatory that the industry needs to make sure that they're safe. So that was one of the concerns, and maybe that's where the vision came out that we want to try to put a safety barrier. But if you look in other jurisdictions in the mainland, including the state of Hawaii, I was just in the state of Hawaii in October, and they had a couple new subdivisions out by Eva Beach, and they constructed concrete walls there. And I think it's mainly a safety factor for the community there. They felt more comfortable that if their kids were inside the safety barrier, that they wouldn't have to worry about them traveling out on the highway. But I don't see where it applies really to haul roads, because haul roads are just designed as that. They're just basically regular traffic, but they're heavier loads going on the same roadway that we have passenger traffic on. So if you want to explain that, your question a little deeper, maybe I could answer it a little better.
Yeah, I think we're contemplating larger loads, which has safety implications. And, I think, like you said, coming out of Atkins Scroll or these other areas, there's a blind spot, right? You don't see traffic until it's maybe really close. So I think these are considerations that this bill doesn't necessarily address, but
it's self-explanatory though, because as a trucker, you want to make sure you control your liability and your, even as a trucker, your commercial driver's license, if you have too many accidents or you have a speeding ticket or you're in violation of something, you're going to lose your license. Most people that have a family they support don't want to do anything to have to jeopardize their income, especially now during these hard times. So that goes all along for the employers also. If you look at some of the fines here and the ones that are still in law, it says after so many violations they can lose their business license. Well, everybody knows you don't want to invest in a big company and then all of a sudden have to close it down because you had too many accidents or you had liability issues or couldn't procure insurance policies. So I think that some of that stuff is just like competition. You know, you let the industry control itself. You know, that'll come along. I know a couple trucking companies that had several accidents where there was a fatality, and you know, they had a really tough time for that year after trying to procure insurance and pay the higher premiums. And they were under a microscope with Department of Transportation, Federal Department of Transportation, because of them. And they also had to reinforce the way they handled accidents as far as drug testing and retraining and stuff like that. There's already rules in the book for that. There's already laws in there. So if you look at the federal highway regulations, you'll see all of those. And a lot of times, us as truckers, we worry more about the federal regulations than we do the local, because the local tend to be more lenient and you know, easier to get around. You can contest a local fine a lot easier than you can a federal fine. Once federal fines are set, sometimes they're next to impossible, and if they are contestable, the attorney's fees, especially if you got to fight them in district in San Francisco or somewhere, it's very costly.
Thank you. But yeah, I think the concern here is that, you know, these haul roads were meant for interstate highways, which have those proper barriers. You know,
that's not completely correct, Senator. If you look, just namely the state of California, there's some of them that do go through residential areas. And some have fencing and some don't. Just the Port of Los Angeles and San Pedro, there's housing communities that are almost right up against the highways where these truckers come in off the interstate. And
yeah, but in Guam,
I don't know how
we don't have that protection. We're talking about haul roads within very high dense areas like Tamuning, you know, these other areas that don't have the proper clearance, you know, visibility.
Do you remember
these are
why
concerns for I think for the public to know that if we're going to allow this type of you know, heavy loads to go through these high dense areas. I've been in a situation where I did witness a truck turn over in the middle of a street. Unfortunately, nobody was hurt, but you know, that was before this bill. So I mean, imagine if we're going to create a bill that allows for increased usage of heavy loads, you know, the potential for unsafe situations. And what you're talking about is the industry regulating itself. It's going to take an accident, and that's what we're trying to prevent here, preventing more of these accidents from happening.
Okay.
So this is one of the implications that I see, and I think this is important for the director to talk to some of these agencies to see where we can strengthen this, because it's really about protecting our community.
If you go back to the plans for Route 1.
Sorry, my time is up. Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, where Route 1's at, that was part of the planning.
Chair.
That's why they have fencing there.
Thank you very much. Senator Perez. Senator Brown, do you have any questions?
Yes, I mean, I understand the presentations being made by the private sector, and overall, I totally understand what they're saying. What we're not addressing here is the reality that many of our residents out there complain about regularly, and certainly now you sit at the mantle of DPW, you hear it all the time, is the lack of maintenance of our roadway system. Federal Highway says here, and you had read, with regards to these, other than, you know, Route 1 and the outer lane that they're talking about, 8, 11, and 16 is not currently scheduled for reconstruction projects. These routes may experience faster deterioration, shoving or rutting of the pavement due to heavier loads. An increase in legal load will reduce the life of the pavement, especially at the intersections. We're already seeing that. Route 8 and Route 1. That was constructed as part of the reconstruction of the Agana Bridge. Route 4, Route 10, that has even been resurfaced since my time at DPW. It's rutting. Tri-intersection, Happy Mart, rutting. And that's without this. And while I understand, because we have industry representatives here on their agenda and on the work that they do, I appreciate what they're saying. But what are we going to do to offset the continued deterioration of the roadway that you right now don't have the resources to address? You're not addressing repairs. I drive by every day on the railings that are now, static projectiles. The next car that hits some of those railings are going to have some serious implications assuming the driver survives it. We can't replace safety signs that are knocked down on the side of the road. We can't maintain potholes and regular maintenance of any kind. We can't go out and restripe the roads with any success. Markings, visibility. So that's where the discomfort is here in allowing the increased load with no infrastructure being put in place to address it on any of these other roads, 8, 11. Well, 11's inconsequential because we're talking the port to Route 1. But Route 8 in Barragata, Route 16, the conditions of routes. Route 10, even though it's not included here, don't tell me none of those cargo is going to go on Route 10. Route 10's in terrible condition. So I think that's the main concern, is the infrastructure of and the capability of the department to address this now without this legislation in place, and the increased deterioration that you're not going to be able to address. And even I know with the amount of time and effort that it goes into reconstructing or building a new roadway, repairing a new roadway, even this, the length of, if it's from Naval Station to the new Camp Blas, that's going to take years, especially because you don't even have a design plan or cleared announcement of funding put forth by DOD. You guys have yet to repair Route 5 from Route 2 to Naval Magazine. And that was discussed before my time, during my time, and still the residents there in Santa Rita have no relief with the damaged roadway that exists there. So I don't have any questions because I think we all see that. The public sees it, and that's the reservation I have right now. We can reschedule this, we can call it anything, we can rename whole roads to whatever we want to rename it, but it does nothing to address the current infrastructure. Right now in front of the Pigo Cemetery, every morning I try to avoid running into that sewer manhole there because the asphalt continues to deteriorate. If anyone hits that at a regular speed, 35, 40 miles an hour, the odds of them busting their tire are pretty good. That has not been addressed. Make that and call it a whole road, increase these loads. You're not going to be able to do anything about that in the next 2-3 years. You don't have the budget for it. And Federal Highway has not prioritized those locations. So quickly, before I run out of time, Mr. Director, how are you going to offset? And it's a major concern. If you ask many residents on Guam, they will tell you the lack of maintenance on the highways is a major concern to the constituency of this legislature. I hear where they're coming from, but I also hear on a regular basis the complaints. Turn on the radio. So if we allow this, we're going to increase deterioration to the roadway. How are we going to offset that? I mean, tangible, not talking about it ain't going to do anything. How are you going to do that?
May I answer?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator, for your comments. First off, you brought about the railings, the guardrails. We have an IDIQ of $2 million where guardrails will be replaced, reconstructed if needed, throughout the island. That's the first time that's ever been done in the last 20 years.
That's not true.
This administration.
It's not true.
Very true.
It's
There's
not
an
true.
IDIQ that...
It's not true.
There's an IDIQ out there, Senator, for a contractor to do restriping throughout the major routes on Guam. Route 4 will be the first one to start, and that'll be at the intersection of Route 1 and Route 4, all the way up to the intersection of Route 4 and Route 10. You talked about Route 5. Route 5, we just received 2 bids. It will be awarded to a contractor. That's probably Guam's worst road, so that'll be reconstructed. I can't say what happened in the past. All I know is when I came into office, we got the design out, we put it out for bid, we got a couple bids, and that's going to get reconstructed. With regard to maintenance of Guam's roads, there's another IDIQ that I just mentioned again. That's a $2 million IDIQ where the contractor will go out there depending on where we delineate what roads we believe need to be reconstructed just in certain areas. That contractor will take care of that. I agree with you. Have the Guam roads been maintained regularly? Absolutely not. It just seems to be a thing here where we build things and we just forget to maintain it. I agree with you, Senator. Shoulders of the roads, the same thing. We live in an island and it's tough to maintain things. It's extremely tough to maintain things. You cut the grass and within 2 weeks it looks like we weren't even there. Potholes are a huge issue here because of the rain. I think you have to agree, though, with the new asphalts that we're using, which is what we put down in the tri-intersection, because whoever did that many years ago, that mix was just wrong. And then we did the intersection at Route 8 and Route 1. We laid down new asphalt there. The new asphalt, the top layer that we're using is basalt. It's got polymers in it, it's got resins in it, and it was one of the first things I said when I first came in. And I told the contractors, whatever you're using, change your ingredients, because the ingredients are just totally wrong, and they just don't last. Tri-intersection looks good so far. It's been almost 2 years since we put that down, and you know, a lot of major trucks go through there. That's where Hawaiian Rock goes from there to the port and back. So I live there. It's looking good. It's holding up well. So is the intersection of Route 8. You spoke about Route 10. We're about to make some major safety improvements on Route 10. Lyndon can talk about that. We're just waiting for funding to do a repaving of that. But I agree wholeheartedly with you. Maintenance of the roads is very difficult here. But I think it really starts with the initial construction and the materials that we've used. Mind you, a lot of the roads are 30, 40 years old. And we're seeing that now. You know, I like to drive on a smooth road. Nobody wants to drive on a rough road. I hate potholes. I get it all the time. You were there, you know, you get 10 phone calls a week, if not more. Fill this pothole. My God, what can we do about these potholes? You know, and we talk about road degradation. Absolutely. But the thing with the bill here is that this doesn't start until the outer lanes are reconstructed. And if they're going to be reconstructed to hold up 200,000 pounds of military stuff, surely they can handle a $95,000 tractor trailer going down the road. That's where I'm coming from. And I'm okay with that. Now, once they start going off onto other roads, and God forbid we catch them, then slip in a huge fine. Make sure these guys don't do it. And I'm okay with a $2,000 fine. They're okay with that. You know, like I said, we're all humans. We'll try to get away as much as we can, but if we can't, because if there's a higher penalty, there's a higher penalty. There's taking away the guy's driver's license. That takes away his livelihood, impact their business license. You know, anything to save our roads. Absolutely, I'm all for that.
I want to clarify your statement. You said that this is not going to be put in place until Route 1 is upgraded? I didn't see that in the bill. Did I miss that, Fino English?
No, that if you look at the dates that we had there, until constructed to a higher standard, and that's Route 1.
Yes, but
Right?
you're graduating it up until then. You're graduating the increase up until then, which means while they're constructing on the outer lane of Route 1, they're going to be in the other lanes of Route 1 that are not going to be covered by federal DOD money.
Yes.
And Route 8 and Route 16 are not included. How are you going to address that? I don't know if that's on your federal highway schedule for reconstruction.
Well, Route 8 just got reconstructed in deteriorated areas. So, you know, we know that road is good for many, many years now.
I just think calling them haul roads is not going to address that. But just one last thing, because I know my time's running out. Your statement about these railings is totally incorrect, because if we recall, a lot of the base on those railings used to be of wood, and they've since been replaced with metal. And I know because that's happened during my time. I know every administration wants to take credit for everything, but we can sit and pick what happened to our time, what you're doing to your time, what the next director will do during their time. But we have an inability to do any regular maintenance on our roadways that continue to deteriorate. And authorizing this on these areas are going to continue to deteriorate these roadways. Would you agree to that?
Not totally, Senator.
Well, I think that's the reality, and I think that's a bigger discussion that we need to discuss. It
All right.
sounds all good because all you have here are industry reps put the people of Guam up there with their complaints about the lack of maintenance, the cost of maintaining their tires, their vehicles, their axles, the list goes on.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Ada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. Just like to thank the panel for being here this late hour, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada. Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm afraid there's issues with the bill as written. Okay, so if you look at page 9, it's an amendment to section 5107, and this is a point of order, Madam Chair, or, yeah,
Please state your point of
5107,
order.
according to the statute, subsection A2. A2 does not currently have any language regarding designated haul road weights or even the 46,000 pounds. It right now reads, shall not exceed 34,000 pounds. Okay, so that part is correct, but that last line here that's struck through does not exist.
Point of amendment, what
And
page
so
are we on?
Please state the page that you're on, the
Yeah,
line number.
I'm so sorry. Page
Thank you.
9, line 3 through 5, and then again on lines 8 through 10. It's showing stuff as if they exist in statute, but it doesn't. So, yeah, this I'm worried about that because I've been very much relying on these strike-throughs to be, we're changing the current law. Okay, so that's my point of order. If I could begin my remarks now.
Okay.
Yeah, that was supposed to be removed because you're absolutely correct. That strike out there.
Thank you very much. Speaker Terlahi, please start the clock for her. That was a point of order, and she'll begin her questioning.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, the clock is beginning from the time you used to ask questions to Mr. Hermy earlier. So
Madam-
please continue your questions.
Madam
Okay, that
Chair,
was not
Madam Chair,
stated,
if I
Madam
Do
may.
you have a point of order, Senator Tydegly?
No.
Please state your point of order.
Put it, go,
Senator
Actually,
Blas.
Without penalizing the speaker for her time, I'd just like for her to repeat what she was
Sure,
referencing.
please restate your point of
and
order.
the page numbers, sure.
Madam Chair,
Senator Sonogstein, do you have a
before-
point of order?
point of information. The original bill is written, is a substitute. Whatever strike, it means the amendment to the bill. So when you want to say it's not part of the law, maybe show us it so we can both see it, not just you. 'Cause
Thank you very
I'm
much.
not looking it up.
We'll have the speaker restate, please restate your, the page number,
Sure.
line number, what you're referring to.
Yes, okay, so on page 9 of the bill, on line 3 through 5 and lines 8 through 10, the struck-through provisions there, you know, according to our standing rules, make it look like this is an existing law, and now we are amending the existing law by striking it through. But that's not the case because these provisions do not exist currently in existing law. I'm reading 5107, I just read it to you. It ends with the 34,000 pounds on subsection 2 and with the 50,000 pounds in subsection 3.
Madam Chair, I still go back to the clarification. I understand where she's coming from. It ended at 34. Not questioning that. But remember, this bill started with these other verbiage to be added on the bill. Then it was strike. That's why it's called substitute. So we leave it alone because it's taken out anyway. So it's not an issue of did it exist in law. It's part of the bill that's been amended and substituted and striked out to take it out. So consider it not there. The only thing changed there was the 34 to 36. That's the key.
Thank you for your point of information,
Po-
Senator
point of-
Sonogstein.
Point of order, Madam Chair. You know, I think if you're looking at this, it looks like that's what the law says. And regardless, I mean, it should not have even been there in the first place. But, you know, as we review this bill, and even when it passes, this will still be there. I mean, you know what I'm saying? If we're looking at this, it looks like it's in the law currently, but it's not. So it just,
Thank
I
you.
mean,
Then
that's
the
not
clarification
normal.
from
That's not
Senator-
normal. It should not have ever been in there in the first
Okay.
place.
Thank you
Okay.
very much for your point of information. This was a substitute version that was working off of the first version of this bill, and so you're seeing the edits from the original version of the bill in this substitute version of the bill, and that is the clarification. So you
And
may
we
now
should
begin
not
your
be-
question.
We should not be seeing those edits. That's the point of order.
Yeah, thank you very
Okay,
much.
so, and Madam Chair, you did not clarify that my questions to Mr. Hermy were going to be deducted from my time. I would ask to be restored to
It was
my
done for
time.
all the senators who asked questions during that round. It was not a free round, so your time did start for the second round as you asked your questions to Mr. Hermy. So please proceed.
All right. It looks like if the director intends that this is only going to be effective when the road hauls, where roads are improved, the haul road highways are improved, then does the effective date need to be today? We can put this off for a little while you develop your rules and regulations, and those haul roads are even closer to completion. Isn't that right?
If, I don't understand your point, Senator.
The current
Baker.
effective date of the bill says effective upon enactment,
Okay.
meaning every weight, every length, dimension, all of these changes become effective immediately. The deletion of
Yes, ma'am.
fines and permit fees, all of that, effective immediately. But if the road haul networks are not even improved yet, then, and you don't want this bill to be effective until they are, then the effective date aren't you suggesting that that should be changed at least until close, it's not necessary to be immediately upon enactment?
I think the point we've been stressing is once constructed to a higher standard, design standard.
And
That's,
you estimate the first Route 1 to be completed when?
and so like, you know, if you pass the bill today, this still doesn't get implemented until the road is constructed to a higher design standard.
When do you expect Route 1 completed?
That could be 2026, 2027.
All right, because I know that's your intention that this doesn't take effect, but it does. There are provisions of this bill that affect every other road, not just the designated haul roadways. I pointed those out earlier. And if we don't intend to make those changes immediately until the designated haul roadways are put in place, then we should make the effective date closer, at least to those, the improvements. So the second question is, so for example, this increases the allowable length of a vehicle on regular roads, not just the designated haul roadways, right? From 40 to 60 feet. And I want to ask you, you are also not just in charge of, fixing up the roads, but also safety on the roads. So how do you think this affects safety? Has there been any consideration of that, the change from 40 to 60 feet on regular roads?
If I may ask, what page are you on? Is this on page 6?
Yes, 5, 6, yes. Yes.
If I remember correctly, at the 85 feet, it was some of the containers coming in are 45 feet now. Instead, there's 20 footers, there's 40 footers, and there's also 45-foot containers.
Senator, can I just comment on that real
may be
quickly?
coming
The reason is we've tried to realign the law because the current law did not provide for these other vehicles that we were required to be used for the bridge formula. So if the requirement wasn't met, then you'd have to go through the whole special permit process. What those provisions on changes in the length does is it allows for these vehicles that are recognized by federal standards to comply with the bridge formula to protect our bridges. So that was something that was left out in the original bill by Tom Atta that was passed into law, was those provisions, and they're exactly like what federal regulations are. And so it allowed for the longer vehicles with more axles. That's all that did, was it aligned that. And there should be no safety factor because it's still within the federal regulations.
Mr. Ariola.
And it spreads out the weight.
You are the safety director for our roads. You could comment on that.
Well,
The change from 40 to allowing 40 to 60 feet.
well, part of it again, you know, if you want to talk safety, you know, you spread out the weight and it reduces the impact on our bridges. I don't know, what other safety issue are you looking at? I mean,
So you're saying there are no other safety issues to be considered?
well,
Besides the impact on the road construction, there are no safety issues as to length of vehicle and driving?
I mean, if you exceed the length of or extend the length of a vehicle by 5 feet, I mean, sure, there's additional, you know, safety issues that we have to be concerned with. You know, and as was mentioned earlier, you know, driver safety, driver awareness, driver training, that's all going to have to be factored in here.
It's not in the bill. And the extension is 20 feet on regular roads. For example, in front of my house or your house, they're going to drive a longer, the sanitation trucks, which we don't allow right now, right? Mm-hmm. They don't come by our house. They come on the main highways, and we do our trash by network. My other question is, I don't think that's properly answered, but so we're currently charging people liquid fuels tax because we want to get that money to repair the roads. But we have very clear testimony from U.S. Department of Transportation, you know, and in the prior enactment of this current law that, you know, these types of vehicles impact the road. I hope nobody denies that. They impact the roads. We're trying to mitigate that by axles, you know, additional axles, things like this. However, the impacts to the roads, we are charging the people of Guam liquid fuels tax to fund those repairs. And so that's why I was curious about what were the fees for the permits that you've been granting that allow these additional weights. And the fees are $100 for 90 days for an entire company. I don't
Please
think
wrap
that's
up your
enough to
question,
fund
Speaker.
or mitigate.
Your time is up.
What that company's impact on the roads might be.
That's current law, Senator.
No, the current law is 34,000. You are allowing permits up to 41 because the current law gives you discretion to allow permits. The prior director said he granted no permits except for those gigantic sanitation trucks and the gasoline trucks. That's what he said in his testimony.
Director Ariola, you can answer, and then we'll move on to Senator Torres. Senator Torres.
Mr. Ariola, can you just comment on the previous question?
I'm sorry?
The speaker posed a question to you. Did you finish your comment to her question?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Torres. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Director, I know you mentioned before, but we're talking a lot about the vehicle weights as the damaging the road. Can you please reiterate again, what are some factors that are also cause our road deterioration?
Oh boy. You know, certainly heavy-weighted vehicles damage roads, the utilization on the roadways, the actual construction of the roadways. That's a huge point because I think in today's construction of today's roads, we're seeing construction that's leaps and bounds from what was happening, say, even 5 years ago. So the construction materials that we're using today are much stronger. They're lasting longer. but you still have stuff like, you know, the vehicles, trucks, the environment, rain, and things of that nature.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Director, the military is building the two outer lanes once again, and they are building this to haul their heavy equipment, right? In other words, they're making their own haul road. We want to utilize that haul road, right? They're paying for this haul road. Should we name it something else? I mean, what do you think there, Mr. Director?
I'm not really particularly concerned about the name. It's more the designation that this lane is only for, when it comes to heavy weighted vehicles, that is the lane that they're supposed to use. They are mandated to use that lane unless an emergency exists. But by and far, they are required to use that heavily constructed lane once constructed.
Thank you. And finally, basically, the framework of this bill and identifying Hall Road, would this be helpful for you to gain additional federal funding if needed for the purposes of road by doing this bill, having it become law? Would this assist you for the department to gain additional access for federal funding? Or would this deter the federal government from wanting to provide further assistance to the island of Guam in building their roads?
It's hard to predict what the federal government would do in terms of funding and or Congress, but you know, this is certainly a need that they see that's needed for their purposes. And as mentioned by, I believe it was Senator San Augustine, would they carry that road construction improvement all the way up to the front gates of Anderson? That could be a possibility as well, depending on their needs. But clearly, we're a beneficiary of that, and we should take advantage of that.
That sounds good, Mr. Director, and thank you. And again, Madam Chair, this substitute version that we have in front of us was submitted finally by our legal department, and they struck through, as my other colleague was saying, some of their concerns, that they identify some errors. What would have probably been better, and what we discussed earlier, is a double underline that, you know, could have been left out. But it struck through, and I think with our great team and the clerks, this won't even show in the engrossed version of the bill. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you very much, Senator Moylan. We will take a short recess to excuse the panel and then begin the third round for amendments. We are in recess. The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. We are on substitute bill number 83-36, the third and final round for comments and amendments. We'll stay in the same order. So we'll begin with Senator Taitigui.
Thank you for always thinking of me, Madam Chair, but, you can always move around to someone else first. I don't mean to always try and be first in line, but I appreciate it. And, Madam Chair, I'd like to thank the body here for working together, and discussing this measure while we were on break and providing some amendments that would, I think, most of us would feel comfortable with, considering that this is going to really make an impact on our community. And it can go either way. It could really go either way. So right now, I think the most important thing I'm concerned right now is our community, the safety of our community. So I just want to thank everyone and those who came today to answer some of our questions. And I've worked with a couple senators to put amendments together that I will now thank them for their including me, and that's it for me. Thank you. And Elvis has left the building.
Okay, thank you, Senator Taitigui, for going first. Senator Blas. Thank you. Senator Terlahi. Comments or amendments? Senator Terlahi. Comments or amendments? Thank you. Yes, please proceed, Senator Terlahi.
Madam Chair, thank you for calling me up, but I don't have any amendment.
Thank you very much, Senator Terlahi. Senator San Augustine, you have amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 amendments. I can begin with stay in sequence of the pages. We'll begin with the SB 83 JSSA L 13 to 26, page 10. And you'll find, my colleagues, that I did ask this during the second round of question about changing the dates. But at the same token, I spoke to the 2 individuals that were here, and I advised them that maybe we need to just take out the dates, take out the month, the day, and the year, and just put down upon completion of construction of the whole road highway to a higher design standard. And they were in agreement and in support of that, and that is imposed on each part, which is letter A, B, C, and number 3, A and B. And then that's the amendment. So it's consistent that we're not talking about dates no more. Until you fix the roads, you can't use the whole road.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. On the amendment, Senator Moylan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the author of the amendment. I support this amendment. I think it's good, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I certainly support the amendment as well, but I just want to ask, I notice there are other amendments that are proposed here, but do we have defined what we would call a higher standard or higher design standard?
Senator San Augustine, do you yield to the
Do we
question?
have a definition of what a higher design standard is? I mean,
Anything then other than what we have?
yeah, I just want to know if it's defined, because I mean, I understand what you're intending to do here, and I support it. I just want to know if there's a definition.
Well, what I recommended was reviewed by legal, and they said using that verbiage would be the appropriate verbiage to use, so that's why I had no objections to that. Yeah, and if we refer to the bill itself on page 10, it was very specific that it identified constructed to a higher design standard. So it's just consistent with the bill itself.
Okay,
It just makes-
thank you very much. On the amendment, Speaker Terlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you. I fully support the intent of this amendment because it was so clear to us that there is no designated haul road highway in existence today. The one that they're expecting to be completed first is Route 1, and that will not be completed until 2026. So the dates were off, obviously. We don't want to implement this 2021 when the road will not be completed till 2026. But they also said that this section was intended to be a graduated authority. So we want it to go up. So, you know, it will increase the amount, the pounds that will be allowed on the road. And so previously it was going 2021, 36,000 pounds, 2023, 40,000 pounds, 2024, 48,000 pounds, like that. So the only problem with the amendment to me is that it sets only one kind of date, you know, upon completion of construction of the Hall Road Highway, they might be able to avail of the maximum pounds, which is 52,000, when the original bill just wanted it to be gradual. But I totally agree, the dates are off, they need to be removed, they need to be changed, or, you know, but there needs to be maybe some other gradual system, but it's complex, and I feel like, you know, rushing to fix it, I can't right now, but I do support the intent. I just feel like the language is not going to give us what we want, and things graduated, you know, by date, like allow some certain poundage, and then it increases every year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaker, are you registering an objection? Senator Tydegly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in full support of this. I think we all agree that we should not be putting the the cart before the carabao here. And I think that's what we're doing. And here, but I do understand the concerns too about, the gradually going 36 to 40 to 48 and 46, 52. I think the rules and regulations that are hopefully to be promulgated or even put in place may address this even. They may have that in their rules and regs. So it's something that that could be adjusted then. Because the rules and regs, once they're brought to the legislature has to approve it. And maybe by then, and when they have a plan in place, because, Madam Chair, we asked if DPW had a plan, and they didn't even have a plan. So this gives them the opportunity, maybe through the rules and regs, to create this type of plan and come back to this legislature when improving the rules and regs to put any kind of gradual step in place. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, Senator Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see the reasoning behind this amendment because we don't want to, I guess, perhaps implement this bill should it become law prior to any kind of rules and regulations. But I think one of the issues that came up during the committee in the whole was the actual roads being ready to be utilized. And I think that's another issue in implementation, to ensure that the infrastructure is in place, first of all, to allow these heavy loads. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment. On the amendment, hearing no objections. Amendment passes. Senator San Augustine, you are still recognized.
Thank you. Now moving along on the page, we'll go to page 22, line 15 and 19. Many of my colleagues have expressed that 90 days won't cut it. I did speak to the director, and he's amenable to the 180 days to give him enough time to make sure that the rules and regulations are promulgated. And also at the same time, he mentioned that if we could put in that the current fines and penalties remain in effect until the rules and regulations are promulgated by the Department of Public Works and are adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. On the amendment,
and I'm co-sponsor with Senator Clinton, just to make sure I mention that.
thank you very much, Senator San Augustine and Senator Rogel. Speaker Terlahi, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the sponsor for including the language that all current fines and penalties will remain in effect, because really what we had before us was a bill that was going to allow increased weight of vehicles on the roads, allow increased deterioration of the roads, and yet removed all fines and penalties, even for exceeding those increased levels. And frankly, the fines look way too low to me right now to curb, excess. But unfortunately, the Department of Public Works was not prepared with what fines and penalties they are considering. And that actually worries me, because if they had fines and penalties ready, I think they should be put into this law, that if we are going, at the same time that we are going to allow excess weight on the roads, potential increased deterioration of the roads, that we should, at that time, when we give that authority, tell them the greater fines that they are going to face. It's like a trade-off, and that they seemed all willing to work with that if the fines are increased, that, that's when they get this authority to put heavier trucks on the road. But it just worries me that DPW, that we're rushing to do this bill, yet DPW was not ready with any potential fines or penalties. But those will be adopted according to this amendment by the AAA, so I have no objection to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On the amendment, hearing no objections, amendment passes. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have another amendment. It's on line 25, page 22, co-sponsored by Senator Clinton Rogel, Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Tello Taidegui. We're going down to section 17, the effective date. It changes what it says in the bill. This act shall be effective upon enactment. It says, section 15 of this act shall be effective upon enactment. The remaining provision of this act shall be effective upon the promulgation and adoption of the rules and regulations by the Department of Public Works in conformance with the administrative adjudication laws provided in Section 6 or Title 16 Guam Code annotated Section 5120. I was assisted in formulating this amendment with legal, so we don't have any questions for legal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. On the amendment, Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very relieved to see this amendment that puts off the effective date of this potential law until the rules and regulations are adopted, because I think we really need to see what types of rules and regulations they intend to adopt for this program. You know, are we going to increase penalties or are we not before we allow the increased weight on the roads? And what type of discretion and what type of standard are we going to use to determine whether the road is able to carry the weight of these increased capacity vehicles without causing to the people of Guam, you know, further burden in improving the roads. You know, we brought this up during the committee of the whole. My biggest concern is that right now, you know, when the original law was passed in 2015, it was so urgent at that time for Senator Tom Adda. It was so urgent for the director of DPW at that time to put in these rules because of the destruction that was occurring to the roads from the heavy trucks. That's what they repeated. I read the committee report. It's over and over in there. That was their biggest concern. And they gave discretion to the director at that time to, in the law, that he could grant permits above the statutory weight limits. And he said he wouldn't be wanting to do that except in cases such as those big sanitation trucks, while we waited for them to, you know, wear out or, you know, their useful life, and then they can bring in more compliant trucks. And he said that he allowed some exception for some gas truck that was not in compliance, but he was trying to allow companies to come into compliance. But that was in 2015, so my guess is that most of these companies have come into compliance, but I think they made a very good argument today as to how this will benefit them economically to better match, you know, the weight that they are able to carry on a ship, you know, the container weight, and put that on a truck and transport it. But I just don't want the burden to be put on the people of Guam to continuously, you know, suffer the damaged roads and to continuously have to repair those roads by paying increased liquid fuels tax. You know, that's the source of funding for these village streets. And this law allows increased pounds of a vehicle on even the village streets, not just the designated haul roads or highways. So that's really my biggest concern. It's like I don't think that they have, you know, that definitely the permit fees that they are charging to me don't seem to balance out with the liquid fuels taxes that all drivers are having to pay on Guam. You know, we haven't seen that kind of analysis, but it's $100 per company for 90 days. So their entire fleet gets covered by 100 days to exceed the current statutory capacity weight limits. Anyway, so I appreciate that. I hope we're going to see the rules and regulations. I hope they're going to be thorough and really address all of the issues and concerns that we brought up. And so putting off the effective date until those rules and regulations are done, I think is very wise. I support this amendment.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On the amendment, hearing no objections, amendment passes. Senator San Agustin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, my colleagues. And I stand in support of this bill with the inclusion of those amendments. Thank you.
Situas Masi. Senator Rangel? Thank you very much. Senator Perez, do you have any amendments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment I'd like to proffer is on line 20, page 2. It's to amend the bill to read, with a reconstructed lane in each direction and a higher standard design recognized by the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and approved by the Director, allowing for the movement of heavier vehicles, shall include the following. And so it continues from there. So I wanted to put more specifications with the term higher standard of design, yeah, that, and during the committee of the whole, I think they were amenable to strengthening that terminology. The reason behind utilizing this verbiage is to, as you know, many of our regulations, we follow the federal law, but this also allows for the director to have some say in what this higher standard of design would entail. So it's really about creating more accountability.
Thank you very much, Senator Perez. On the amendment, hearing no objections, amendment passes. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
The second amendment is on line 25, page 21. It's to amend section 5119A, section 14 of the bill to read, A, tow trucks may be exempt from weight limitations and under this chapter provided such tow trucks operate within manufacturer's specifications and further comply with local laws, rules, and regulations. So that's, I think, the thing that they left out. In addition to making sure the brakes operate, I think there's other safety considerations that need to be included when we exempt certain vehicles, is making sure that they are abiding or operating within the specs as well as they're in compliance. There have been instances where there have been citations or there are vehicles that are still operating despite despite the violations, and I think it's important to reinforce these regulations or these requirements.
Thank you, Senator Perez. On the amendment, Senator San Agustin, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, maybe the author can explain this. As I'm reading this, tow trucks may be exempted under this chapter, provided such tow trucks operate with manufacturer specification. For my colleagues here that are former police officers and myself from being from revenue and tax, you cannot get a license, a business license, or even be registered as a tow truck unless you meet the requirements. And when you register as a tow truck, motor carrier has to inspect it and make sure you got a highway safety code number on your truck. And most of you seen it says GU and whatever. And that requires not just manufacturer specification, but federal highway safety requirements. And for local laws, that's what motor carriers for. That they do this and they comply. So I don't know if this is needed, only because revenue and tax has to enforce this. The Guam Police Department, when they see a tow truck out there and they don't see you have a license, and if they pull you over and the driver doesn't have a chauffeur's license, the tow truck is towed. It's actually towed by another tow truck, and it's gone. Because it has to comply with local laws to begin with. And revenue and tax is the enforcer for that. So I don't know if this is needed, because there are laws that already governs this. So I don't know if the author wants to further explain it, but this is a revenue and tax. It's a law. It exists. Enforced by the Guam Police Department and motor carrier. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, Senator Perez?
Yes, I do. I think just because it's in law doesn't mean it's being practiced. And I think this is important to reinforce whenever we can, because currently as it's written, all it requires is that the brakes are working. And to me, there's other considerations that need to be made or reinforced. So, yeah, I think in reading this, there definitely is a potential loophole, especially if they're going to be exempt from weight limitations. I think even more so, it's important to have the language there that reinforces the safety aspect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Perez. On the amendment, Senator Terlahi, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, I respect the comment that was made by Senator San Agustin, but when you look at the amendment, manufacturer specification and further comply with local laws, rules, and regulations. So that explains the provision that's, and the requirements that's coming out from revenue and tax, so I don't think there needs to be a change on that one.
Thank you very much, Senator Terlahi. So are you registering an objection?
No, not an objection, but clarification of the amendment itself.
Sure. Senator Perez, do you yield to the question?
Yeah, so how it's currently written in the bill, and so basically, yeah, I think the other policy question is the exemptions period. I mean, in federal law, it doesn't allow for exemptions for these items. So this is part of the bill itself. But it says it shall be exempt from weight limitations. Currently, they are not. And so if we're going to grant them weight limitations or exemptions from weight limitations, I think it's important to reinforce that they are complying with the safety laws, especially specifications. I mean, the only thing in the language here, it says that provided that all axles on the tow vehicle shall have operational braking systems. I mean, I think there are more safety considerations than, obviously the brakes are important, but, are they following the specifications of the, what they're towing? So perhaps maybe this, so I guess maybe the question is, if we're exempting them from weight limitations, are we allowing them to go beyond manufacturer specifications? I mean, maybe that should be removed then, if this is a safety issue. Are we allowing a lapse in safety by allowing this exemption?
You have a point of information?
Point of information. Only because of my experience in motor carrier and working revenue and tax, manufacturer specification allows certain tow trucks to pull certain weights. If you want to talk about pulling an 18-wheeler, they would call Big Ben. They won't call Moylan's or, and it's not insinuating anything, but there's certain tow trucks that cannot pull. And I just want to make sure that's point of information. If you look at it, it meets the manufacturer specification. And on the braking issue, if it doesn't work, the brakes, the tow truck won't be trying to pull. They know that.
Thank you for your point of information. Senator Terlahi, you are still recognized. Does that satisfy your inquiry?
I have to agree with the previous speaker.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator. On the amendment, Speaker Terlahi, followed by Senator Moylan.
I support the amendment. It's very clear. It takes a provision of the current bill and simply rearranges some of the words. That's all it does. The words are exactly the same. They're just rearranged a little bit. So it's the bill that's requiring that the tow trucks operate within manufacturer specifications and that they comply with local laws and regulations, and that be done if we are going to allow them to be exempt from the weight limitations under this chapter. It's completely consistent with the bill. And this part of the bill I actually agree with, that if we're going to allow that exemption, then we should just make sure they're required, and they put that in there, the requirement that they comply with Guam law, that they comply with manufacturer specifications. So I have no objection to this. I think the rearrangement of the words makes it a little bit clearer. No objection at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with how the current language is being stated. I disagree with this amendment. I object to this amendment. I think we're fine with how it is written at this current point. And I appreciate the other comments made in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Moylan. There has been an objection to the amendment. Would you like to close, Senator Perez?
Yeah, again, safety is first. If we're going to exempt any vehicle to go beyond the weight limits, I think it's important to look at the safety of the public. And so by requiring that they follow manufacturer specs, they comply with government law, I think that kind of reinforces this idea of safety for the public. I think we should all be in agreement with that if we are actually looking after the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perez. There has been an objection to the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Senator Perez, you are still recognized.
That concludes my amendments.
Thank you very much. Senator Brown.
I don't have any amendments, Madam Chair, but supportive of a number of them that have been put through that would make this bill acceptable. I think we recognize the presentation that was made by the private sector here this evening, but obviously there's a greater concern as well to balance that with regards to ensuring we don't encourage further degradation of our roadways. So with that, in the late hour, Madam Chair, I have no further comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. Senator Ada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any amendments, but again, I support this piece of legislation. I think it's a medium balance between what we need and what they need, and what we can do to keep our roads safe and secured, and hopefully we'll be able to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada. Speaker Terlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one amendment, line 19, page 2. So it's to amend subsection E 5101, which defines the designated haul road highway as a designated haul road highways with a reconstructed lane in each direction and a higher standard design allowing for the movement of heavier vehicles shall include the following. Now, this provision I just read was amended earlier, so I would like legal to accept those earlier. I'm not intending to affect that earlier amendment. My amendment is on the highlighted section, subsection I and II. So currently the bill lists as the designated haul road highways, Route 1, Route 8, Route 11, Route 16. And if we leave the bill as it is designating those as haul road highways even before there is a reconstructed lane. And I don't think that was the intent. Everybody kept saying we're waiting until the lanes are constructed, if they're constructed, because the only one they knew would be reconstructed for sure is Route 1, portions of Route 1, not even the entire Route 1, but portions of Route 1. And that will be completed, they estimated, in 2026. So my amendment is to show that Route 1, provided they are reconstructed for heavier use and certified by DPW as constructed to a higher design standard, and that standard was set forth in the earlier amendment. So it's just to, make tighter this language that reconstructed, what does that mean for heavier use as per that design standard, and DPW has to certify that. And so as to the other routes, 8 and 11 and 16, there was somewhat conflicting testimony, but DPW was very clear. They only want to use Route 8, Route 16 for emergency, they said. They want the trucks to go through Route 1. They don't expect anyone to be using the other ones except in an emergency when they have to divert them off of Route 1 for other reasons. That's what they said. It was kind of clear from the other companies that were here, the private companies, that that's not what they're thinking. But in the meantime, I think, we have to go with DPW's assurance that these routes, first of all, they're not prepared yet to be reconstructed, but that we do not designate them until they are reconstructed for sure, and that DPW certifies them as constructed to the higher design, and because of their testimony, that they are designated and certified by DPW for emergency use, meaning he can announce that on, whenever he needs to, that these can be used by the big trucks or the heavy vehicles whenever necessary. And then the last part of this is to remove that last line of this subsection that says other highways designated by the Director of Public Works as they are reconstructed for heavier use. If Route 1 is not going to be done until 2026, then I think there's more than enough time to pass additional legislation that will designate other haul road highways for this, by statute, because we've already got a list here that looks like it's going to take a long time to get completed, and this will give them time to bring to the legislature, vet through the people of Guam which other highways they want to allow these big trucks on. And my concern is that when we've seen this discretion given blankly, there really is no control over it. You could have a designated haul road highway in front of your house tomorrow. And I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I just say we should be tight with our statutes so that if it's not necessary, if it's not going to happen for 10 years from now, then they have lots of time to vet that properly instead of just giving one person sole authority to do that. So that would be my amendment, and I ask my colleagues to support this.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On the amendment, Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the I and the double I, but the last part, the other highways designated by the Director of Public Works as they are reconstructed for heavier use. The word there, as they are reconstructed for heavier use. So, and I understand her explanation. I understand the author's explanation, but I look at it this way. I don't know how many of us are going to be here in 10 years. And we always need to look forward to what's going on and what evolves and what we can anticipate. Do we honestly believe that Harmon Industrial Park is going to be the only place? Wrong answer. Why? Because we already upgraded the zone at Tizan. So we can expect that could change the movement of heavy equipment. Already there's heavy equipment movement, La Zone. I'm surprised that's not listed here somewhere. But only for emergency use. And that's why I have reservations, or I have an objection on that last part only. Other highways designated by Director of Public Works, they're reconstructed. If they're reconstructed, then he can designate it. If they're not reconstructed for higher use, he's not going to designate it. He's not going to say it earlier. I'm going to designate this road because I want to no, it has to be reconstructed first. It has to be upgraded before he can, that's what it says. Other highways designated by the Director as they are reconstructed. I honestly believe that there are going to be other parts on this island that's going to be reconstructed. If anything changes on the back road, it's going to be reconstructed. And we allow the Director, because I'm not going to tell the Director what he's supposed to do. I would just hope that he will come to the board, to this body to ask additional support and move on from there. Because a lot of our roads are anyway funded by federal government. So if they start identifying that they're going to need the back road, they're going to reconstruct it all, why not allow them to do that? But this would strike him from, or him or her, from designating this after it's reconstructed. Thank you, Madam Chair. Otherwise, I agree to the other parts. It's only that part. Thank you.
Are you offering an amendment to the amendment?
No, because I'll be required to write it, and the time is ticking.
Thank you
I'll
very
just end up
much,
objecting to it,
Senator
unless that's
San
taken off.
Augustine.
Thank
Okay,
you.
there has been an objection to the amendment. On the amendment, Senator Brown, followed by Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly understand the comments by the previous speaker on this amendment, but I also feel that there should also be a public process under which these designations are made, because they are significant, particularly with regards to, obviously, we've been discussing how fragile our road system is and our lack of maintenance. So, I'm sure we would like the Director to designate, but at the same time, there needs to be a public process. I mean, right now, they can change the speed limits on the roadways, and there's no public input into that. So I support the amendment as put forth by the sponsor, so that there's a more public process, because as time goes on, as our population grows and more communities are developed here in our villages, it's going to hit home. And I would want to make sure that the residents in the community from one village to the other, this road may extend in the future, have some public process of being engaged in that decision rather than simply, and as a former director of Public Works, I think I'm the only one in the room who can hold that title and the only woman so far, at least prior at the time, to ever hold that position. I just think there needs to be a public process. So I support, even though I understand the position of the good senator here that spoke prior to me, I just think there needs to be a better community awareness and input with regards to designating haul roads. Why would we give up that authority? We're here doing it tonight with this bill, so I wouldn't want to just open that up in the future for any director to do that. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. On the amendment, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the intent of the amendment. However, I would need to object. As mentioned earlier, there actually is a trucking company inside TGen already, one well established. And we have several grocery stores also. I think that's Route 8 possibly up there. One recently opened and one's about to open. Large construction project going up there. We also have, I think, a bottling company and some places that even sells milk in Barrigada side. These businesses are established there. I would like to, I think it's important that we allow the director to do this and allow him to confirm. After all, we confirmed his appointment as director for this department. And with this amendment, I think it will make it unfair for those with established businesses already in that area to include a trucking company in TGen. So I appreciate what the intent was for this, but unfortunately, I need to object. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. On the amendment, Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. I too had reservations about identifying other than Route 1, 8, 11, and 16. I mean, if you drive down any of those roads, there's a lot of turns and dips. And I think it's really important to have the infrastructure in place to the design standard, right, to a sufficient design standard that can handle this. The other thing is, in the committee of the whole, it was said that Route 1 was the primary route, with the other routes being emergency routes should there be rerouting necessary. So I think it's in line with what was provided in the testimony. So again, I mean, I'm thinking about, we didn't hear from the Mayor's Council either. What was their take on this? I don't see it in the committee report, and it's going to affect a lot of the villages. We know about visibility sight lines that are not conducive to this. Even in some of the testimony that was given, the outer lanes are considered the suicide lanes, in which cars are backing up into the main road. I mean, we see this as we drive down our roads. What more, we're having these large, heavy loaded vehicles going down these outer lanes. So I think it's important to really kind of take a good hard look at the impacts. I know we're in a rush to increase development, but I think also what's missing is the voices of those that are going to bear the impacts of this. And so I think this is a good compromise, really. It's assuring those safeguards are in place before we go forward with this measure. So I rise in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Perez. On the amendment, there has been an objection to the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Speaker. Please, you may close.
Yes, I'd just like to address some of the concerns. So this amendment endorses that we want additional roads to be fortified. Nothing in this amendment is trying to prevent additional construction of roads, improvement of roads, and the fortification of roads so that they can withstand the heavy trucks. But it's what was said today in the Committee of the Whole at the request of the sponsor of the bill to go into the Committee of the Whole. And we heard from the director very clearly that they're not ready for that on any road, and they will be ready for that. The first road they're going to be ready for that is Route 1, and that is in 2026. And we also have to recognize that these larger trucks, we're talking about increased length in addition to increased weight. These trucks will have impacts to communities beyond just impacts to the road construction. They have other impacts as well. And I do believe it is our, one of the best things that we are going to do is to allow these communities some input as to that, and to point out what their concerns are, at least when before these highways are designated for these large and heavy trucks. It does not prevent the director from making a future designation, but it absolutely allows public input, in regards to their community and their concerns. And I think that's so very important. And we're doing that, as the previous speaker said, with this bill, the director had no issue bringing this to us, showing us which roads he wants to designate, exactly when that will be happening, how they were going to fund it. None of these are funded except for Route 1. The rest are not at all. And so I just think there should be no problem, no issue for the director to bring such a big, huge designation before the community of Guam again. And yes, we will not be here at that time, perhaps, if it's beyond 2026. We won't be here, but the community will still be here. They will still want senators who are going to look through this and make sure it's vetted, make sure that they had an opportunity to say. They might even be at that time saying that this law that we passed tonight, has some problems, and they want conditions on that type of designation. They will know at that time from experience what the implications really are. We have no designated haul road highways at this time, so no one has been able to determine the implications yet. And so this gives everybody that opportunity, including the director. And again, this is, I think, in consideration of what was said and in the consideration of what seems to be like a rush to implement this bill when we are being told that the road will not be ready until 2026. It's concerning to me. I hope we're not going to put all the authority into the director for every, future designation, because, I worry about that. That's not the checks and balances that we, as a government of Guam, should be promoting. We need to increase checks and balances, or we end up, in the pari-pari system. That's what we don't want. And so I'm just saying this is a formal process that we are in the middle of. We've vetted the bill. We've had opportunity to ask them all the questions that our communities would like. Maybe more are necessary, but that's what we've got for tonight. And I don't want to deny any future communities or future directors, future senators that opportunity. I really ask my colleagues to support this amendment so that we can feel more responsible in passing this bill, that we are not giving a blanket approval for all future projects that we know nothing about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Terlahi. There's been an objection to the amendment. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Speaker Terlahi, you are still recognized.
I very much understand the desire for a designated haul road highway. The concept makes absolute sense. I think it will benefit the businesses, and that we should do it. What I don't understand is the rush to do it when the bill is so clearly has errors in it. It's flawed. It's giving total authority over to the director for things way beyond 4 major highways that we have no money to improve. And it gives sole discretion. I think that's a mistake on our part, to rush something like that. So I'm very glad for the amendments to the bill that kind of set it off until rules and regulations are in place. And that's another concern. If this is such a rush, when we have no roads ready to be designated, and we have no rules and regulations ready from the Department of Public Works, and we have, it's like, I can't help but wonder, then why give all this discretion? There's something wrong. Are we intending to use that discretion prior to the Route 1 construction? Are we intending to use that discretion prior, to the rules and regulations? And the bill, the biggest flaw in the bill that was so glaring and unbelievable to me really is that we were going to grant this huge additional capacity on our roads on the backs of the people of Guam, yet we were removing all fines, penalties, permit fees that are already so low that they do not mitigate the impact on the roads. And I agree with a speaker tonight, one of the other senators, that said, this is one of the biggest complaints that we are getting from the people of Guam. It's the condition of the roads. And so if we are not going to vet the designation of these haul road highways, and we're not going to show the people of Guam that we've put the investment in, that they are actually improved, that they can actually handle the higher weights, and we're just going to allow that discretion, even delegate it away from the legislature, I don't agree with that. I think, we should honor the business people's requests. We should designate these roads, but we should do it upon proof, like we require tonight, that they will be constructed, that they will be able to handle, that capacity and all other issues that we were vetting at that time. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Senator Torres. Thank you. Senator Moylan.
Madam Chair?
Do you have a point of inquiry?
Well, Madam Chair, just for purposes that was missed earlier by appending the materials that were provided to us earlier from the U.S. Department of Transportation as well as Public Works to be appended into today's journal and the committee report. That's all. I just want to make a motion that these materials that was presented to us today, my motion is to include it into today's journal and to the committee report. That's all.
On the motion, hearing no objections, motion passes. Senator Moylan, you are recognized. Okay, thank you very much, Senator Moylan. You may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues. Really interesting conversation on the bill. I appreciate all the amendments and discussions, and some passed and some didn't. But what we really had was a good discussion tonight and prior public hearing as well, all the way going back to the 35th. But tonight was a good example of teamwork between Commerce from Mr. Eddie Cruz and Hermie Keha, and also with the director and his engineer. These folks have been working on this bill much longer than I've been reading it for the past several years. Their professionalism and their expertise was really helpful in us coming across and getting some of our amendments and answering the questions. Overall, the Commerce folks, as well as DPW, are all here to help us to balance out, to make things better. And this is what 83 does. It may not agree with everything on each one of our sides, but it's much better than what we have before. So I thank my colleagues, and I also just want to make a statement for the actual sponsor of this bill. And so in closing, I want to thank the Vice Speaker for allowing me to work closely with her on this measure as well. And of course, it's really difficult of what the Vice Speaker is going through and on the health care for not just her loved one, but also for herself, having to go through a car accident. And I seen the injuries on her head with staples, but thank God she's still alive and doing her best to come back to the people of Guam. So, Madam Speaker, if you're watching, I'd just like to say, hopefully that you're doing much better, and we're praying for your swift recovery. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you again, colleagues. I appreciate moving this bill forward as well. Thank you, Madam
Suduas
Chair.
Masi, Senator Moylan. We'll take a brief recess. Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 8336 Core, as substituted on the floor and amended in the Committee of the Whole, with the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole, to be placed in third reading file. Madam Chair.
On the motion, hearing no objections, motion passes. Move to rise. Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation that Bill number 8336 Core, as substituted on the floor and amended in the Committee of the Whole, be placed on the third reading file.
On the motion, there's been an objection. All those in favor of the motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole, please raise your hand. To clarify, this is to rise from the Committee of the Whole. There is an objection. All those in favor of rising from the Committee of the Whole, please raise your hand. Please state your point of order. That is correct. This is a motion to rise and to accept the recommendation to place in the third reading file. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes. We are in recess.
y 36 ng Legislature ng Guam is back in session. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
To Masi, Madam Speaker, I wish to report back to the body after the deliberation of Bill Number 83-36 COR as substituted on the floor and amended in the Committee of the Whole, that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole is to place substituted Bill Number 83-36 COR and amended in the Committee of the Whole to the third reading file.
On the motion to place substituted bill number 83-36 COR is amended in the Committee of the Whole to the third reading file. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, motion carries. We're now continuing in second reading. We are in resolution number 215-36 COR. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place into the third reading file resolution number 215-36 COR. This resolution is relative to expressing the utmost support of Legislature ng Guam for the passage of House Resolution 5606, which is the Return Home to Housing Act, which seeks to amend Title 38 of the United States Code to adjust the rate of per diem payments provided by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to grantees that provide services to homeless veterans, and further requesting parity and inclusion of all veterans residing in Guam and in all territories. And if I may make a brief discussion on the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this is on behalf of Senator Talina Nelson, the prime author of Resolution number 215-36 COR, which expresses the support of the 36 Guam Legislature for the passage of H.R. 5606, the Return Home to Housing Act, which was introduced by Congresswoman Nikema Williams. This congressional legislation would raise the maximum allowable rate that the United States Department of Veterans Affairs can reimburse service providers who supply transitional housing to displaced veterans. Increasing the maximum allowable rate ensures that these organizations are adequately reimbursed for their cost. House Resolution 5606 will help housing providers supply more housing to homeless veterans in need of experiencing homelessness, that are in need or experiencing homelessness, and will help to address the housing injustices that many veterans are facing today. This proposed legislation would also provide more funding to grantees that provide services to homeless veterans. The U.S. DVA grant and per diem program has funded shelters that have assisted displaced veterans seeking stable housing or in transition. The Return Home to Housing Act would ensure that veterans will continue to have full access to high-quality support services and shelters while on the path to permanent housing. Resolution number 215-36 COR further supports the passage of H.R. 5606, which intends to help end unhoused veterans. Thank you, Madam Speaker, on behalf of Senator Talina Nelson.
Thank you, Senator Torres. On resolution number 215-36 COR, is there any senator who would like to be recognized? If not, then the sponsor may close.
Madam Speaker, I just move to add to the list of co-sponsors Senator Amanda Shelton.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Torres.
Thank you. I move to place into the third reading file resolution number 234-36 COR.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator. On the motion to place resolution number 215-36 COR on the third reading, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now on resolution 234-36. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Thank you. I move to place into the third reading file resolution number 234-36 COR, introduced by Talina Cruz Nelson, Tina Rosemond Barnes, Clinton E. Rigel, Amanda L. Shelton, V. Anthony Atta, James C. Moylan, Jose Pedro Terlahi, Christopher M. Duenas, Teresa M. Terlahi, Frank F. Blas, Jr., and Sabina F. Paris. This resolution is relative to expressing the utmost support of Iminatrentay Sais na Legislature in Guam for Senate Bill 3284, the Veterans Assistance Helpline Act of 2021, which seeks to permanently establish a toll-free number helpline for veterans to use in order to quickly obtain information and assistance with all services from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And if I may speak briefly on the measure.
Yes, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of Senator Talina Nelson, the prime author of Resolution Number 234-36 COR, which expresses the support of the 36th Guam Legislature for the passage of S3284, the Veterans Assistance Helpline Act of 2021, which was introduced by Senator Jackie Rosen. This proposed legislation would permanently establish a toll-free telephone helpline to obtain information about resources and services provided by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. The number will be an easy-to-remember 3-digit dialing code and connect veterans to a live individual rather than an automated recording, and grant them access to all federal assistance programs and information on health, education and employment opportunities, and housing programs. The Veterans Assistance Helpline Act of 2021 would ensure that veterans will continue to have full access to their benefits and services across the globe and from the comfort of their home. Resolution number 234-36 COR further supports the passage of S3284, which intends to assist veterans with information on their benefits and services by providing a simple dialing code. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. On Resolution 234-36 COR, is there any senator who would like to be recognized? If not, then the sponsor may close. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to add myself, Senator Mary Camacho Torres, as a co-sponsor to this resolution.
On that motion, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I move to place this onto the third reading voting file as well.
On the motion to place Resolution 234-36 COR on the third reading file, is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. We've exhausted our second reading file. Is there a motion? Majority Leader, Acting Majority Leader Senator Shelton, you're recognized. Senators, we're back in session. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move that we recess until 5 p.m. on Friday for voting.
On the motion to recess to Friday at 5 p.m., is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are recessed until 5 p.m. Friday.